now let's do a quick run through for PES. It is very similar to PED that we have already talked about last time. It also ranges from 0 to infinity because we talked about the sign for PES is positive. So how we calculate this is by using an equation of the percentage change in quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in price, right? So like PED, the quantity supply is on top and the price is at the bottom. So the result has no unit, and the value is not in a percentage term, okay? So, here's the timeline. We only care about this range from 0 to infinity. So supply is price inelastic when PS is less than 1. And this happens when the percentage change in quantity supplied is smaller than the percentage change in price, if you go back to the definition, right? And my quantity supplied here is relatively unresponsive to the changes in price here. So you can see that the curve will actually slope upward to the right corner from the quantity supplied axis, and the endpoint will meet the horizontal axis. And if you apply the same logic, you'll be able to know for price elastic supply, the value will be greater than 1, since the percentage change in quantity supplied is larger than the percentage change in price. But this time, the endpoint will cut the vertical axis, and supply is unit elastic when PS is equal to 1. So all of the curve here, as you can see on this diagram, reflects unitary PS. But this can be a little bit different than PED, right? Because we mentioned that as long as we have the same scale, and whichever demand curve is flatter, the more elastic it is, right? But for supply curves that pass through the origin at 0, the steepness doesn't actually tell you whether the supply is elastic or not, since at any 2 points on the curve, the percentage change in price will be equal to a percentage change in quantity. But in other cases, when a supply curve doesn't go through the origin, it is still very useful for you to compare the elasticity based on the steepness of the curve. So what I mean here is that, for example, in this case of using the same scale, and when supply curves meet together at some point in this graph, except for the origin. So at any given price level, as you can see, steeper the curve or closer that it approaches to the vertical line, the more inelastic the supply is. And next, supply is perfectly inelastic when PES is equal to 0. And my quantity stays the same at every price level, as you can see. And it will be perfectly elastic when PES is equal to infinity here. Meaning that the producers will be willing to supply at any quantity under the price given. Okay, so now a super quick run through of all of the determinants of price elasticity of supply. So just remember SLARM here. It's our ARM. This abbreviation will help you to memorize all of the determinants, right? So first, spare or unused capacity of firms, meaning if firms have more unused capacity, say in a factory, the easier it will be able to produce, therefore higher the PES value. And L stands for length of time. So longer this time, the more ability the firms will have to increase the quantity produced because it will have more time to adjust their inputs. So PES actually rises. And A stands for the ability to store stocks. So greater the ability to stock, the higher the PES value. And R is the rate at which costs increase. So higher this rate, the more obstacles or difficulties to increase outputs. So lower down the PES in this case. And finally, mobility of factors of productions or resource inputs. So higher this mobility, the more quickly resources can be transferred from one place to another. So higher the PES value in this case, right? Okay, so in our last section for PES, let's talk about the distinction between the PES value for primary commodities and manufactured goods. So usually we see a lower value in primary commodities. Why? Because the time that is needed for quantity supply to respond to the changing price takes very long. So normally it would take farmers an entire planting seasons to increase quantity if there's a change in price, right? So another thing is a plus, the technological change that's required to increase the output doesn't come overnight. So, okay, here's a question. Which one would represent the supply curve for commodities like quinoa, and which one represents the curve for manufactured goods, say motorcycle? Pause for a second. It is the more inelastic one, right? So this one marks in red, because the value for PES will be much smaller for the steeper curve. So now let's consider a demand shift due to, for example, consumers' rising income. So we see a greater fluctuation in price for quinoa here. So, okay, that's all you need to know for PES. And next time, we'll talk about YED. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment if you like. And I hope to see you next time. All right? Ciao.